Hello, everyone. Welcome to a conversation with Australian Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Defence, the Honourable Richard Marles MP. We provide this program in Japanese and English simultaneous translation. Please turn to channel 2 for English, and for participants on YouTube, please choose English or Japanese at the bottom of the screen. And on a trial basis again, we also have a captioned the video on YouTube, and you can access the caption at the bottom of the screen again. Japan and Australia have built close relations, and these days the relations have been deepening very rapidly. And Mr. Marles is in Japan, and during this time we take this opportunity to invite Mr. Charles to be here for this special occasion. Dr. Atsushi Tsunami, President of Sasakawa Peace Foundation, first gives you a welcome remark. My name is Tsunami of Sasakawa Peace Foundation. It is great pleasure and honor to have Australian Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Richard Marles MP. As major powers in the Indo-Pacific, Japan and Australia are expected to develop a free and open Indo-Pacific initiative proposed by the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Many other global issues called for Japan-Australia closer coordination. Both of our countries are expected to expand and deepen our bilateral relations further. In response, various efforts were made. This year alone, Quad Summit meeting was held in Tokyo in May. And in October, Prime Minister Hon Kishida visited Perth, Australia, and Mr. Kishida and Prime Minister Hon Albanese announced a joint declaration on security and cooperation. We've seen these further signs of deepening diplomatic and security coordination. The Sasakawa Peace Foundation, with its mission statements expressing the establishment of a new ocean governance, realization of world peace and security, and solving various problems on the earth, have worked on research concerning developments in and around Japan-Australia relations at its Ocean Policy Research Institute and Security Research Group. Today's conversation with Honourable Deputy Prime Minister Marles will certainly help deepen and expand the Japan-Australia relations. I also appreciate the participation of ambassadors and representatives of diplomatic corps in Japan in person, and the people in the public online, sharing your time from your busy schedule today toward the end of the year. I hope you will all wish for further development of Japan-Australia relations. I conclude by hoping today's special lecture by Mr. Marles will promote further deepening and expansion of the strategic and partnership between Australia and Japan. Thank you.
須波理事長、ありがとうございました。
Mr. Tsunami, thank you very much. Without much further ado, I'd like to invite Australian Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Marles, for his special lecture. And please refer to the material for Mr. Marles' background. Thank you.
Can I thank Dr. Tsunami for the warm introduction and the Sasakawa Peace Foundation for hosting me today. Can I acknowledge Mr. Sasakawa? And can I acknowledge the members of the Diplomatic Corps who are here, the members of the Diet, my good friend Shinko Izumi, and all the dignitaries who are here today. It's good to be among friends. And here in Japan this week with my dear friend, Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong, for the 10th Australia 2+2 consultations with Minister Hamada and Minister Hayashi. My first international visit as Deputy Prime Minister of Australia was to Tokyo. So this is my second visit in the last 6 months. And my meeting with Mr. Hamada today will be my third ministerial meeting with Japan following the Shangri-La Dialogue and the Trilateral Defence Ministers meeting in Honolulu in October. And this tempo is no accident. It reflects the priority Australia places, and I place personally, on our relationship with Japan. Even more, it reflects the extraordinary evolution of this relationship over the past 2 decades. Consider the 2 key bilateral developments this year. In January, Australia and Japan signed the Reciprocal Access Agreement, Japan's first effective status of forces agreement with another country other than its alliance partner, the United States. This treaty will not only streamline our ability to deploy to each other's territory, it signals our intention to increasingly do so. Then in October this year, Prime Minister Albanese and Prime Minister Kishida signed the updated Joint Declaration on Security Cooperation, which will act as a compass for our security relationship and allow us to refine the scope and objectives of our operational cooperation. And it also includes a commitment to consult on contingencies that may affect our sovereignty and regional security interests, and to consider measures in response. This is a serious commitment we have made to each other. We describe Japan as an indispensable partner, and this is exactly the way we would describe our alliance partner, the United States. It will see us deepen the work already underway, building seamless interoperability and communication. It's a big job for both of us, but crucial for the stability of our region. These 2 agreements now give Japan and Australia the bilateral architecture to ensure our defence and security cooperation is commensurate with our strategic alignment. And you'll see this in the years ahead, in the increasing interoperability of our defence forces, in greater joint training, including trilaterally with the United States in Northern Australia, something I spoke about with my US counterpart, Secretary Austin, in Washington, DC earlier this week, and to which we both reaffirmed our commitment. In deepening cooperation on advanced capabilities in areas such as undersea warfare and integrated air and missile defence, and through expanded regional cooperation, such as our crucial work together this year in humanitarian disaster relief in the Pacific. And the logic of this is inarguable. Japan and Australia share a profound commitment to democracy, open economies, and free societies. We are both Indo-Pacific island states and trading nations that rely on rules and norms that we cannot alone enforce. And when we look out at a much tougher strategic environment, we come to similar conclusions, that preserving our security and prosperity will require greater ambition to shape our region's strategic trajectory by our own actions, rather than resign ourselves to a great power dominance. This is not just a consensus of the Australian and Japanese national security communities. Recent polling by Sydney University's US Studies Centre underlined increasing popular support for Japanese-Australian security ties. I was struck by the fact that over 60% of voters in both countries support the idea of a security alliance. And yet at another level, this is no surprise. On the first anniversary of the Great Sendai earthquake and tsunami in 2011, the Australian Parliament conducted a condolence session in solidarity with Japan. As I listened to one speech after another, I was moved by the way successive parliamentarians spoke about their deep personal connections with Japan. Because after more than 70 years of business and educational ties, there are now strong personal friendships that have formed between many Australians and Japanese. The truth is today, our bilateral relationship is built upon deep people-to-people connections. And so it's natural that public opinion in both our countries should support the deepest of security relationships between Australia and Japan. Strong leadership too has been essential in our relationship. Prime Minister Albanese and Prime Minister Kishida demonstrated that leadership when signing the joint declaration this year. Deeper ties have long been a project shared by both sides of politics in Canberra and across successive governments here in Tokyo. And it's important to acknowledge the particular contribution of the late Abe Shinzo. It's hard to overstate the former Prime Minister's role in not only building Japan's strategic partnership with Australia, but also his influence on how democracy should respond to the tougher world we face. Mike Green, in his terrific new book, Line of Advantage, charts how Abe and his team, which of course included then Foreign Minister Kishida, recast Japanese grand strategy in maritime and cosmopolitan terms, the free and open Indo-Pacific, solidarity with the region's other maritime democracies, and championing inclusive trade and investment rulemaking. This strategy also involved a rethink of Japan's military role by reinvesting in the US alliance and revising Japan's long-standing ban on collective self-defence. This decision enabled joint military training and operations with the United States and Australia, leading to Japan undertaking its first asset protection mission for Australia late last year. The first time Japan has provided military asset protection to a nation other than the United States. Prime Minister Kishida has made clear his determination to fundamentally reinforce Japan's defence capabilities within the next 5 years and secure the substantial increase of its defence budget needed to effect it. Importantly, this strategy has not preferenced military power over diplomatic, economic and normative tools. Instead, this strategy has understood that national security isn't just dependent on deterrence, but on building regional architecture that embeds powerful incentives for countries to cooperate. As Prime Minister Kishida undertakes a wholesale renewal of Japan's national security strategy, national defence program guidelines and mid-term defence plan, we see Japan continuing this important work by building its capabilities to underwrite a global rules-based system essential to our shared prosperity and security. And this approach has been deeply influential in Canberra, not least because it positioned Japan as one of the principal defenders of the international liberal order, encouraging Australia to work more closely with it. As Japan renews its key strategic settings, Australia is doing the same. Over the coming months, the Australian government will be taking a series of steps to ensure our defence and security settings respond to the environment around us. And the first of these has been announced this week in the United States, where Foreign Minister Wong and I met with our counterparts, Defence Secretary Austin and Secretary of State Blinken. There, Australia and the United States announced we will be stepping up our cooperation under the bilateral force posture initiatives first established by the Labor government of Julia Gillard back in 2011. Crucially, this will involve expanding the rotational presence of US capabilities in Australia across air, land and maritime domains, including rotations of the US Bomber Task Force, fighters and future US Navy and US Army capabilities. And consistent with the recent Australia, Japan and United States trilateral defence ministers meeting in Honolulu, we agreed to invite Japan to increase its participation in force posture initiatives in Australia. In the first quarter of next year, I will make public the government's response to Australia's Defence Strategic Review commissioned by the Albanese government in its first 100 days. And this review will recommend how the Australian Defence Force will recalibrate its military capabilities, force structure and posture for more effective deterrence to enable the Australian Defence Force to hold potential adversaries' forces at risk at distance and increase the calculated cost of aggression against Australia and its interests. And early next year, the Prime Minister and I will also announce with the United Kingdom and the United States the optimal pathway for developing a conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarine capability under AUKUS. Nuclear-powered submarines will be an essential part of Australia's naval capability, providing an unmatched strategic advantage. And this capability will revolutionise the potency of the Australian Defence Force, dramatically change Australia's strategic posture and enhance Australia's sovereignty, making us a more capable defence partner for our allies. AUKUS will also drive the development of other advanced capabilities, allowing our three countries to pursue advantage in undersea and electronic warfare, hypersonics and counter-hypersonics, advanced cyber and quantum technologies, and artificial intelligence. AUKUS is a capability and a technology partnership, one which we hope will form part of a broader network Australia seeks to build in which Japan is central. And my intent is to grow defence industry integration with Japan, bilaterally, through our trilateral mechanisms with the United States, and when ready, via our advanced capabilities work in AUKUS as well. This is an incredibly ambitious agenda, but the world is changing and we must respond. Recently, my Canadian counterpart, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, observed that when Vladimir Putin ordered his tanks across the Ukrainian border in the early hours of February 24th, he brought a brutal end to a 3-decade-long era in geopolitics. The post-Cold War era, a period of democratic expansion, unprecedented integration of global trade and investment, and we assume the end of ideological confrontation is now over. We don't know yet what era will take its place. Instead, there will be a contest among states to shape the structures of the 21st century world. And this is what we are seeing play out right now in Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. As we condemn this immoral and illegal invasion in the strongest possible terms, we must also make sure a conflict does not repeat, particularly within our own region, which is now at the centre of global strategic competition. And navigating this more complex period will require wise, sober and responsible statecraft. We need to do more to deter the risk of conflict, while also reassuring states that conflict is never the only option. In the midst of great power competition, there is a pressing need for the stabilising influence of guardrails and of dialogue. But governments must also make the investments necessary to give their words strategic weight. Japan and Australia's robust support of Ukraine's defence is one such example. It illustrates that like-minded states will not tolerate aggression even on distant shores. Australia and Japan have led the region's response to Putin's invasion and the growing solidarity between Europe, NATO and the Indo-Pacific. Australia's increasing investment in defence capabilities is another example. It's a prudent and necessary response to the arms build-up we are seeing occur in the Indo-Pacific. One of the most consequential features of our region today is the sheer scale of China's military power. It has engaged in the largest military build-up since World War II. And it is occurring without transparency or reassurance to the region of China's strategic intent. And this is the most significant factor shaping the strategic landscape in which Australia and Japan exist. And to be clear, Australia, and for that matter, the world, expects Beijing to act in accordance with international rules and international norms. Now, Australia notes that China has said it has not provided Russia military equipment for its illegal invasion of Ukraine. But we call on China to go further, to condemn Russia's threats to use nuclear weapons and call for an end to the invasion of Ukraine, a clear violation of the UN Charter's core principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. I've said many times since we assumed government just over 6 months ago that Australia does look to stabilise our relationship with China. And we do welcome the recent meeting between Prime Minister Albanese and President Xi during the November G20 summit. And I'm pleased that 2 weeks ago in Siem Reap, China and Australia agreed to reactivate long-standing defence talks. Australia is committed to resolving long-standing differences through dialogue and investing in inclusive regional architectures such as ASEAN to ensure we can continue to protect our collective security and prosperity. But we must also deal frankly with the risks we face, and that is what Australia is doing. The way forward is not obvious. Over the last decade, China has sought to shape the world around it in a way that we have not seen before, and that gives rise to challenges for both Australia and for Japan. Yet at the same time, for both Australia and Japan, China is our largest trading partner. What is clear is the need to work closely with friends. And when it comes to friends for Australia, Japan stands in the front row. It's also clear that Japan and Australia have never been more strategically aligned. Indeed, I find it hard to think of a country with whom that statement for us is more true. And so the partnership between our two countries is now being elevated to an unprecedented level. Like Japan, Australia does not place a premium on military power as a tool of strategy. Australia will place its primary focus on diplomacy, economic openness, and upholding rules, working with our regional partners in the Pacific, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, and the Quad. But we are also resolved to have the capability that contributes to a sustainable balance of military power, so that no country judges the benefits of conflict might outweigh the risks. For decades, the Australian-Japan diplomatic partnership has quietly been a key platform for much that's happened in the region. We cooperated deeply on the Cambodian peace process, the formation of APEC, the response to the Asian financial crisis, on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and on elevating the Quad and focusing it on delivering for the region. But going forward, the partnership will be key to defence and security for Japan and Australia, and for the region and the world. We are working together on the emerging realm of economic security, supply chains, critical minerals, rare earths, critical infrastructure protection, and our crucial energy partnership. Indeed, Australia is providing over a third of Japan's energy, with great opportunities to jointly drive the regional clean energy transition. We are also working on ensuring our region never slides into confrontation. This effort will require cooperation among many states, but the Japan-Australia security partnership can serve as a catalyst. We've all benefited from the United States network of alliances, but now we are poised to build the Japan-Australian relationship as a powerful force in its own right. Australia's relationship with Japan is foundational. The Joint Declaration on Security Cooperation and the Reciprocal Access Agreement mean we now have the roadmap to take our partnership to a very different place, to a better place. Our partnership is becoming indispensable. So today I am personally committed to working with my good friend Minister Hamada in the service of peace and stability in our region for an Indo-Pacific where peace is the norm, sovereignty thrives, and prosperity is the dividend for all peoples. Thank you.
マールズ副首相、ありがとうございました。
Deputy Prime Minister Marles, thank you very much. Now we are going to have a dialogue session between Mr. Marles and Dr. Hide Sakaguchi, President of Ocean Policy Research Institute of Sasakawa Peace Foundation.
A great speech about the perspective of Australia and also the framework in between Australia and Japan. Let me introduce myself. My name is Hide Sakaguchi, the president of the Ocean Policy Research Institute of Sasakawa Peace Foundation. I specifically thank you very much because actually the Australia let me restart my life after the big earthquake hit COVID-95. And then I immigrated to Australia and served for the federal government of Australia as a research scientist of CSIRO since then. So I thank you very much again, His Excellency. Thank you.
Well, I think we won out of that consequence by getting your services in Australia, so thank you.
My pleasure, yes, thank you. And based on your speech, covered whole area, not only the Indo-Pacific but also the relationship in between multilateral countries relationship. I'd like to have some question. Okay, and the first question is what are the next steps for the Australia-Japan security relationship, and how will you build on the reciprocal access agreement and the joint declaration? This is my first question.
Well, thank you. And it's a good question because having got the reciprocal access agreement and the joint declaration on security cooperation now in place, the question really is the one you've asked, which is what is the next steps? I think there are a few things. Firstly, we've got to make sure that the mechanisms within that architecture we invest in, so that we continue to have the meetings that we should, that we continue to put in place the dialogue, which is an inherent part of both pieces of architecture. But then I think more putting that into operation, I think we've got to see increasing activities, operations, exercises between the servicemen and women of Japan and the servicemen and women of Australia, and doing that in a way which is more complex so that we build our interoperability. I think we need to look at ways in which we can trilateralise that, so that it's us working more closely together in a complex way, but also involving our defence forces with the United States as well. And I think there's real opportunities to do that as we see the US force posture in Australia grow, and that was a consequence, as I said, of our meeting with the United States earlier this week. And there's an enormous desire, I think, on the part of all three countries to use this as an opportunity to work more closely together. And finally, as we think about our place in the world and the depth of our strategic alignment, leveraging that so that as two countries, in a sense, we work together in the world. Now that means working together in thinking through how we do respond to China, but working together in terms of our presence within Southeast Asia. I think particularly working together in terms of the work that we do amongst Pacific Island countries, and there are huge opportunities for us to cooperate more there. So I think all of that represents the kind of agenda that we now need to roll out with vigour, which I'm sure we will as a consequence of having these two really important agreements in place.
Well, thank you very much. I fully understand the sentences and also the practices, in your speech. in behind. Thank you very much. It's very great information. And my second question I would like to ask you is, you've reflected on the evolution of the bilateral relationship in between Australia and Japan for the last 2 decades. And so the point is, where do you see the relationship with Japan in another next 10 years?
In a sense, I think that's the exciting question, because I feel like there is a sense of deep optimism as we talk to each other about the work that we can do. And when you cast your mind forward a decade, there are huge opportunities, and I think the relationship will look increasingly organic and seamless. I think what that means is that in terms of the way in which our two militaries operate together, exercise together, we've got to see a much greater level of interoperability, almost interchangeability, where there's a complete sense of comfort in the way in which we work together. I think greater sharing of information and intelligence will be a part of that as well. I think there's a lot to do in terms of our defence industry, making sure that though our defence industry is more engaged in each other's countries, but perhaps greater sharing of technology and information. But I guess 2 things. One is making sure that we are working together on innovation, developing new capabilities, science and technology, and we're really keen to see that happen. But where we see much more robust supply chains between our 2 countries. Now, all of that comes off a strong base. A lot of that is obviously present now, but I think there's a real opportunity to take this to the next level over the coming 10 years, and for that to look, as I say, even more organic, more seamless than it does now.
Thank you very much. As Minister Marles mentioned about innovation and also defense industry together with science and technology, I know one of the organizations in Australia, Defense Science and Technology, they had developed voice recorder and black recorder for the airplane, which now widely used all over the world, and that is the basic of the power of the Australian government with defense science and technology with innovation. So I fully understand, in your answer. Thank you very much.
That's right. I think, but see, to me, this is where I think there is real opportunity for us as a country to be working closely with Japan. We do have, as you rightly refer to, some incredible innovations that have come through Australia's innovation, science and technology infrastructure. And in terms of your own personal experience, you will have seen that firsthand. One of the real challenges, though, for Australia is commercialising that, translating science into jobs. And that's where I actually think there's such a huge opportunity for us to learn from Japan and work more closely with Japan to build our own nation as one which has science and technology more at its heart. I think a real challenge, actually, for Australia, and we can learn so much from Japan, is how we make our economy more complex, more human-based, but kind of change our cultural relationship to science, where that is something which is really front and centre. And I'm full of admiration when I look at this society and when I look at Japan for the centrality of science and technology in people's lives and in the economy here. And I really hope that we can learn from Japan and bring a lot more of that to Australia.
Thank you very much, Minister Marles. This is very important information, for both countries. Thank you. My third question is, you mentioned a commitment in the joint declaration on security cooperation to consult on contingencies that may affect our interest and the measures to be taken in response. So the real question is then, what is the significance of this?
Yeah. Well, I think this is hugely significant, and it's probably really at the core of the joint declaration. So I suppose to say a couple of things up front. I mean, this doesn't pre-commit either country, nor should this be read as being in response to any particular third country. This is really a commitment that at its heart is about the relationship between Japan and Australia. But in so many ways, this is a really natural evolution. I mean, it could be applied in a range of areas, such as in natural disasters. And if you think about the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, or you think about the mega fires, the bushfires in Australia in 2019, 2020, in both instances, there was obviously deep consultation between our two countries. And, you know, in the first, Australia sent material to Japan to assist in the immediate aftermath of the tsunami. Equally, you know, Japan reciprocated in sending help to Australia during the bushfires. So consultation, responding in the midst of a contingency, in this case a natural disaster, is something that we already do. But I think to put this on paper, make it a central part of the joint declaration, acknowledging that this is a natural thing for us to do, is a very big statement for both of us about the character and the closeness of the relationship that we now have. I mean, as I said before, we would describe Japan as an indispensable partner. That's really the way we describe our alliance with the United States. So these words in the joint declaration really place our relationship at a very, very high level, at a level that we've not seen before, and I think it's full of potential going forward.
Thank you very much. Such confirming, great words, because to find out good friend or not a good friend can be, found out when something really, happened to each other. So in that sense, contingency and also joint declaration means a lot, not only for long term, but also day by day. Thank you very much. Let me move to the next question. As you mentioned in your speech, but do you see the evolution of AUKUS into JAUKUS as has been suggested in some quarters? This is my question.
Yeah, look, I think, so as I said in the speech, AUKUS is a partnership between the United States and the United Kingdom around the development of emerging military capabilities. I mean, obviously, a big part of that is the UK and the US working together to provide Australia with a nuclear-powered submarine capability. That's not something Japan has sought. But in terms of the other parts of AUKUS, it is about looking at how the three countries can cooperate together more closely. The first thing I want to say is it's not the totality, and it should not be read as the totality of our effort in terms of the cooperation that we engage in terms of working jointly with other countries on military capabilities. We want to do more of that with Japan. I mean, we see this as a really important emerging part of our relationship with Japan, and I know that Japan already does this with the United States and with the United Kingdom. So there is a huge space in which our countries can work together, irrespective of the existence of AUKUS. I think in terms of AUKUS itself, and particularly this pillar, we've got to focus on making sure that it is actually starting to deliver significant cooperation on new technologies. And so in that sense, we've got to get to a point where it's delivering. But when it is delivering, I absolutely think that there is the opportunity to involve Japan in the work that we are doing. And I think that's a view which is shared by both the UK and the US.
Thank you very much. Such very, touchy and also important, your perspectives. My last question is the one relating to the Ukraine issues. As Australian has been one of the largest non-NATO supporters of Ukraine's self-defense, including with lethal military equipment. So the point is, why does this distant war matters to Australia and Japan?
Well, look, it fundamentally matters to Australia and Japan, and both governments understand this because of the fundamental principles which this conflict engages and what are at stake. As trading island nations, both of us, we are very dependent and reliant upon a global rules-based order, and we've been together, two countries engaged in promoting that rules-based order, sustaining it for a very long time. Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine is a complete challenge and affront to the global rules-based order, and it can't be allowed to stand. And we're as much invested in that as countries in Eastern Europe, because the global rules-based order is not only under threat in Eastern Europe, it's being challenged here in the Indo-Pacific. So it's really important that we are standing with Ukraine and making sure that Russia's actions cannot stand, so that Ukraine's ultimate triumph in this is something which stands as an example for everyone in the world.
Thank you very much. We have learned in last 30 minutes from Mr. Marles a lot about issues going on in the world. But today I can tell you more than 200 audience get together in this auditorium, together with the online people, altogether more than 500 listened about the speech and also the answer to my question. And so we have learned a lot. And at last, I thank you very much for the Australian team to have this meeting together with the Japanese team and also the embassies in Tokyo people. I thank you very much to finalize this meeting, and thank you very much. So my final announcement is the Deputy Minister Marles will informal shake hands in front of here, so please leave after this ceremony.
Those of you who are in the back of the room